It is fantasy football season, and trying to decide how to approach your draft, it can be a massive headache. In this series, I'm going draft slot by draft slot, talking over what you can expect to see from your draft position, what strategies you can use, which players you might want to take, and which players you might want to avoid. We'll touch on the sleepers available later on, and we'll even run through a super quick mock draft so you can see exactly how I would draft from each position. If you're picking up a 110, these are some of the players that you can expect to see there. Garrett Wilson. So far through Garrett Wilson's career, he's caught passes or at least been targeted by quarterbacks like Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, Mike White, Chris Streveler, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, and very briefly, Aaron Rodgers. Even at 40 years old and coming off an Achilles injury, Aaron Rodgers is still by far the best quarterback that Garrett Wilson has ever played with. Wilson posted an identical 56% catch rate in both of his seasons in the NFL, but it shouldn't be surprising to see that jump by a good amount this year. The biggest concern will be where the Jets play slow and their defense keeps the games low scoring. Aaron Rodgers has always had his favorites though, and in the red zone, Garrett Wilson can absolutely thrive and easily score double-digit touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs is still stuck in a timeshare with David Montgomery, but we see second-year players take a leap plenty of the time, and he flashed enough potential, but he's worth your interest. In 2023, he finished as the RB7 in half PPR points per game, despite the fact that Montgomery led the backfield in touches last year with 17.3 per game compared to Gibbs' 15.8. Gibbs produced explosive runs at a massive 9% big run rate. That dwarfed Montgomery's 3.8. We want explosive players when it comes to fantasy football, and I'd take Gibbs for that alone over some of the running backs who come just after him. If you're picking up a 110, there's a couple of players that I'm looking to avoid here. Saquon Barkley. Having just turned 27 years old this offseason, Saquon Barkley isn't necessarily past it just yet, but he's played over 14 games just once in the last 3 years. Through 7 seasons, he has only 3 1,000-yard seasons. Barkley, he finds himself playing on the best offense and with the best offensive line of his career now, but there's still reasons to be pessimistic. Barkley's averaged 293 receiving yards per season over the last 3 years, falling below 1.0 yards per route run in 2 of the last 3 seasons, and not having been above 1.5 since his rookie season. The Eagles, they threw the ball to running backs at the 12th lowest rate last season, so that doesn't really help Barkley's case either. Perhaps they felt that they needed a more electric receiver, but I'm not sure Saquon Barkley is that for the reasons we just mentioned. This is before we even get into the fact that Jalen Hurts, when it comes to the cheek sneak, the brotherly shove, whatever you want to call it, he had 16 rush attempts inside the 5-yard line last year, the 8th most among all players, and he converted them into 13 touchdowns. Why would you go away from that? Marvin Harrison Jr. The Cardinals, they selected MHJ with the 4th overall pick in this year's NFL draft as they try their best to surround Kyler Murray with enough talent to help him actually succeed. Harrison is currently good as the wide receiver 8 in average draft position, which for a rookie, that's awfully high. When Justin Jefferson entered the league in 2020, he had 88 receptions for 1,400 yards, finished as the wide receiver 11 in PPR formats. Jamar Chase had 81 receptions for 1,455 yards a year later, finished as the wide receiver 5. That's the level that we need Marvin Harrison to ascend to pay off as a rookie. But when Justin Jefferson was in the drafts for the first time, you were able to get him as the wide receiver 48 in his rookie year. Jamar Chase went as the wide receiver 29. There is no rookie discount being given in 2024. Marvin Harrison has massive upside, a true elite prospect. But at this cost, there's also massive downside to be had. Why take Marvin Harrison here when you can take Malik Neighbors a couple of rounds later? We're going to use Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard to mock draft. It is insanely customizable. You can sync it to your leagues and automatically copy the settings in. Then it'll adjust the rankings for that. You can choose which expert rankings and insights you'd like to see, including mine, which are part of the expert consensus rankings of over 100 people from across the fantasy football industry. There's no waiting around for other people. Nobody taking 6 kickers in the mock draft. Instead, we can mock draft against the wizard, get feedback from top experts on our drafts. Check out the link in the description below to start your own mock drafts right now. If you are finding our videos for the first time, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button down below. We are ever so close to 3,000 subscribers. Here we do Dynasty, we do Best Ball, we do Redraft, we do DFS. We get you cooking all year long. Picking up 110, this is a half PPR league. We've got 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 flex spot, defense kicker, and 6 bench spots. Picking at the 110, nothing too crazy going on here, but we get Garrett Wilson falling to us. That feels like a smash pick. 4 running backs go. So getting Puka Nacua in the second round, pairing Garrett Wilson and Puka Nacua together, that's so much fun. When things come back around to us, there isn't really a running back in this range that feels like an auto click. So instead, let's lean into the 0RB build, take Nico Collins. We've now got our 2 wide receivers we need to start every week, as well as our flex spot. And now we can look and go, okay, let's take Jalen Hurts, a player with QB1 overall outcomes within his range. And when things come back round to us next time, the running backs, it's still looking a bit like these guys are all a reach. So instead, let's take Dalton Kincaid, a player with, again, positional tight end 1 within his range of outcomes. And now when we get to running backs, let's add Raheem Mostert. Maybe he scores 17, 20 touchdowns again like he did last year. Maybe he doesn't, but he's a fun player. Javonte Williams is getting so much hype out of Broncos camp. At some point, you've got to even decide whether you want to fade him completely or buy in. I'm kind of okay with this price in redraft leagues. Now, with the board falling to us, we've got tight end, we've got quarterback, we've got running backs, we've got wide receivers. Going to keep building that running back room just for one more pick with Devin Singletary, who's going to get a huge amount of volume this year. But now we can come back to the wide receiver position. Look at players. Jameson Williams, massive upside if he turns around and finally puts it together. Curtis Samuel, another Buffalo Bill, but that's fine. It doesn't matter that we don't have Josh Allen. Curtis Samuel can lead the Bills in targets this year. We hit this pocket in the draft where it's all quarterbacks and tight ends, and none of them really appeal too much. Instead, looking at the wide receivers, let's take Jahan Dotson. Maybe he can bounce back in a meaningful way with Jaden Daniels there, a player who can actually get the ball to his wide receivers, unlike Sam Howell. We'll add Jake Ferguson as our second tight end. He might not be the most glamorous, but he gets a lot of red zone opportunities. In the 13th round, we can go pretty much wherever we want with this one. So let's add another running back, Dameon Pierce. Perhaps he puts it all together this year and things click for him in Houston after they really were a struggle last year. We'll take the Browns defense for the 14th round, and then when things come back round, Evan McPherson is our kicker. We got a B on this one, 83 out of 100. This wasn't one which Fantasy Pros experts liked. My good friend Andrew Erickson giving me a C-. Pat Fitzmaurice done many a show with giving me a C- as well. The mock draft wizard saying that if I drafted Stephon Diggs at the 5'10 and drafted a tight end later, your score would have been 44 points higher. That feels meaningful. Look here. That really was the spot. If we'd taken Stephon Diggs there instead of Dalton Kincaid, we could have come out with a much better team by the looks of things. That's the beauty of doing these mock drafts. It lets you play with it. Check out the link in the description below to start getting into these mock drafts right now. Hit the subscribe button. Leave me a comment telling me what I messed up in this 110 team, what you liked about it. We answer every single comment and question around here on this channel. Hit the subscribe button. We will help you win big in 2024.